Thank you, everybody. We are thrilled to be here. Our Chief Creative Officer, Alex Mahernia, was supposed to do this introduction. Unfortunately, he was unable to make it, so I'm filling in. Again, it is such an honor for Rosetta to be here, especially as a sponsor. We so admire everything Kat has done to help us and other agencies like Rosetta get to the point we need to be. It is also a huge privilege for me to be here introducing Anne and Guy, two people I greatly admire, as I'm sure all of you do. They don't really need an introduction, so I'll keep this brief. Anne is the director of global Trendspotting for JWT Worldwide. She's a respected authority on trends, consumer insights. She's a seasoned journalist, researcher, writer, and editor. She's appeared as a subject matter expert on the Today Show, on The Early Show with CBS, NPR, BBC, among many others. And most importantly, she is a fellow Buckeye. Guy Kawasaki is a New York Times best-selling author of a dozen books. A dozen books, including Ape, What the Plus, and Enchantment. Previously, he was the chief evangelist at Apple and helped make Macintosh a household name. In his spare time, he's the co-founder of Altop.com, a special advisor to the Motorola unit of Google, as well as the founding partner of VF firm Garage. Over the next 75 minutes, or perhaps it looks briefer now. Originally 75, we've condensed.
I don't know if I have 75 minutes of content.
And we'll help you. They will be discussing the trends and technologies that will captivate consumers in the near future. Following their discussion, we will have a Q&A. We are hoping that you will all participate in this by tweeting your questions to Next Trends. So without further ado, Guy Kawasaki and Anne Mack.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so when Guy and I were talking and corresponding about this fireside chat, I don't see a fire. We talked about some broad categories that we wanted to chat about today, but hopefully we'll be able to open it up to the floor in a little bit to take your questions, and so tweet them out too. But first, let's start with mobile.
Okay.
Because you're working with Google and Motorola right now, and I thought that would be a good place to start at. Over the years, we've seen the mobile phone evolve by leaps and bounds. It went from a simple communications device for texting and talking to an everything hub for music listening, game playing, video watching, social networking, shopping, researching, and so on. And now it's evolving to what we at J. Walter Thompson call the mobile fingerprint. So it's evolving to become our mobile wallet, our keys, our health hub, and more. Soon it will become our de facto fingerprint, our identity all in one place. So, speaking to this audience here, we're full of early adopters here, and I'm sure many of you use your phone in that way. But when you talk to the general consumer public, they're kind of like, whoa, using my phone as a wallet? What? It's still very futuristic to them, even though the technology is there. So what needs to happen for consumer attitudes and behaviors to catch up with the technology?
Probably the youth. I have two sons. I have three sons, but one is 18 and one is 20. And for them, this is an artificial discussion, right? It's not, how are you going to compare your phone to your computer? That kind of discussion never comes up. And so for them, they are phone-centric. And it's easier to tell you what their computer does than what their phone does, because their phone does everything, and their computer is mostly for generating textual content. But everything else is the phone, and it's the center of their world. So I think it's going to happen faster than most people think, and it'll be we'll just wake up one day and there'll be 5% of people using computers to generate text content, and the rest is phones. I think it's actually a better world that way.
It's true. I mean, what we're seeing in many of the emerging markets, many of the consumers are leapfrogging the PC
Yes.
altogether and going directly to the mobile phone primarily or for the first time to access the internet. And that's happening, as you said, with the younger generations, Gen Z and the millennials.
And that should scare the crap out of Microsoft. Because that arguably is the company that has the most to lose by this happening. I don't know if I would buy Nokia for that reason, but that's a different discussion.
If you were a company like Microsoft, what would you do in order to change your business model to adjust for, and it's not just Microsoft, it's any traditional company, to adjust for this mobile-first mentality?
Well, you could do something draconian and tell everybody that unless you're in a department or you're in a function where you are generating text content, the center of your world from now on is your phone. Mm-hmm. Because I think if you look at, to this day, many companies' websites, clearly the center of their world is the desktop, and they happen to make a mobile version, but very few of their employees use the mobile version, and you can tell, because when you go to their website with a phone, it's just so suboptimal. Yeah, it's horrible, right? And things are all out of place, and things don't scale right, and you have to scroll horizontally. It's just utterly ridiculous. And that, I think, is a case where the dogs are not eating the food. The dogs are eating last generation food, and they're perfectly fat, dumb, and happy. One of the advantages I love of Chrome is that on an Android phone anyway, with Chrome you can request the desktop site. So it's a conscious action where you want to see what the desktop site is, but by default it's the mobile
goes to the
site.
mobile site.
Yeah, and that is a very interesting insight. But I really think it's going to happen. It's inevitable. I mean, that horse is out of the barn. That horse is, having intercourse and reproducing. It's too late to shove that horse back in the barn.
There's a lot of little ponies
Yeah,
coming.
there's a lot of little ponies. Some unicorns too.
Well, it's so funny because magical unicorns.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I was reading a story in The Economist yesterday, and it was talking about the second screen, and that being the mobile phone, and how marketers and platforms like Twitter are trying to crack it. And I just shook my head because actually, if you think about how often you look at your mobile phone screen versus any other screen in your life per day, you realize it's your primary screen,
absolutely.
and everything else is secondary. So you do hear a lot of buzzwords, which I already threw out, like mobile first and responsive web design, and it sounds like some of the smart ones are already doing it, but there's still a lot to be done in that realm in order for marketers and companies to have a mobile first mentality.
And I would think that what's going to lead us would be something like Amazon. That company truly wants to sell everything we buy, and if you want to sell everything that we buy, the core of their existence has to be a phone, right? Because that's where people are going to shop.
Well, and it is becoming a more seamless experience where once you have your credit or debit card information uploaded, it's like seamless. You tap to buy, and it's so easy, it's really scary.
Yeah.
And it becomes like funny money, which is kind of curious because they want you to have that impulse purchase, whether it's a book or something much bigger like a music system. You just tap to buy. It's scary. Another thing, we talked about this mobile fingerprint idea, but that actually is happening with biometric identification, meaning iris scans, facial recognition, voice recognition, digital fingerprints. The latest iteration of the iPhone, its 4S version, has a digital fingerprint identification, and some Android manufacturers like Samsung are incorporating facial recognition. Where do you think biometrics will go over the next few years?
To me, that's just mechanics, right? I mean, the goal is that you have authentication. At Motorola, we do it in different ways. Motorola actually introduced fingerprint as an authentication method, and it wasn't adopted that much. It's kind of interesting to see what happens. I think there's going to be a lot of experimentation. I have to admit that I am not one of those people who consider authentication and security the gating item to the use of mobile phones. I think the user interface of most websites is the bigger issue. It seems maybe cavalier to say, but I assume that kind of thing will be taken care of.
Right.
And the security on my phone is already so much better than the security where I hand a credit card to anybody who has a white coat, right? It says, here's your check. Okay, here's my credit card. And here's the number in the back. And here's my, I do all that. So I think that's going to be a given.
But arguably, your identity is so tied to your mobile phone. It's not just your credit and debit card information that will be there because of the mobile wallet, but it's also your health information. It's also your location information. So it's very personal information that's being uploaded to your mobile phone minute by minute, passively and actively. So I can understand why there's a lot of privacy concerns. If I lose my mobile phone, I in essence lose my identity.
Well, I mean, that is true. I mean, you can remotely wipe your mobile phone, but I'm also, again, kind of a cavalier attitude, but I'm not that paranoid that, if Tim Cook is tracking where I am because I have an iPhone 5, something is wrong with him. I mean, he must have something better to do. And I'm trying to go through this scenario where, like, I'm obviously using a Motorola phone, and let's say, Google knows where I am at every given moment. I don't know what Google would do with that information. Are they going to blackmail me because I was near the Pink Pussycat strip club or something? I'm like, what? It happens to be next to 7-Eleven. What do you want from my life? I'm trying to go through this scenario where why are people so afraid?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's both positives and negatives to it. From a marketing perspective, we talk about this idea of predictive personalization. So as data analysis gets more sophisticated and cost efficient, and as we upload more measurable data than ever before, brands will be able to predict what we'll need or want and serve up very precise messaging and offers accordingly.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is based on our location, our social network, our interest, our demographic, and so on. And from a positive perspective, the messaging will be much more precise and relevant to the end user. And we've done some research around this. So we talked about, okay, this is what will be happening. And consumers were like, oh, this feels like Big Brother is watching me, and I don't like the notion of being analyzed. But then they said, on the flip side, well, it's okay if I get relevant offers, and it's okay if I save money. So I think it's just, you have to ensure that the value exchange is very clear and there's real tangible benefits to it.
I happen to be on the glass half full side, that the better and more relevant the content and even the offers and promotions push to me, the more I like it.
Right.
Now, the negative of that is, how can they possibly know that, Guy, you like, diesel Audis in white, and so they're pushing you an ad for a white diesel Audi. That can give some people the creeps, but I don't know. My observation, having watched a lot of social media interaction about this, is the people who are the most concerned with their privacy have the dullest lives. And so, arguably, they don't interest me what they're doing. So, I mean, maybe Barack Obama does, maybe Colin Powell, I don't know, who knows what Cheney wants. But I've just noticed this inverse relationship that it's kind of like whenever you read about the TSA, there's always someone who says, it freaks me out that when I go to the airport, some TSA pervert might touch my body and see an X-ray of my body. And then if you looked at that person, you'd have to say, God, if I were the TSA, you're the last person in the world that I would want to touch and X-ray your body. You are flattering yourself. That would be my solution. Like if you're complaining about the TSA, you post your picture and then people can vote, hot or not.
Yeah. I love that. That's actually a really good app.
The lines would be much shorter.
I couldn't help but notice when I was coming in the cab last night from the airport, the big billboards.
You got a cab? You didn't catch Uber?
I got a cab.
Oh, my
I was
God.
too lazy to even use Uber.
Okay.
I just rolled out of the airport and into a cab. So billboards all over, and it said, your personal data belongs to, and NSA was scratched out, and
Yeah.
it says you, and
Yeah.
then it's a BitTorrent, and
That's
it was-
ironic.
It is really ironic, but there is this sentiment out there surfacing in the blogosphere and elsewhere and on Twitter that we do need to take control of our personal data, not to take it back so we live these very private lives, but to maximize what we get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So almost to put a currency on it, like how much is my data worth to you? How much are you willing to pay? Because people are earning money off of our data.
Well,
why can't we?
I understand that logic. I don't want to seem contrary to everything, but it is also the case that Facebook and Google Plus and Pinterest and Instagram, we are deriving value from using them, right? So if there were a model where you paid Facebook, but they knew nothing about you, I don't know how many people would take advantage of that. So there's no such thing as a free ride. And so if you have bought into Facebook and you're sharing your pictures and all that, there is a point where you have to say, well, they've got to make money somehow. And if they're looking at what I do and then they send me ads that are relevant at a higher CPM than an irrelevant ad, well, I guess that's their business model since I'm not paying them a subscription.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the old TV model. You get
Right.
content for free, and in return, you have to watch
Right.
ads.
So, of course, there is a limit to which Facebook can go or Google Plus or any of these things. But the limit is not zero. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who have a sense of entitlement that, I am doing Facebook a favor by using it. How dare Facebook try to monetize me? Don't they realize how much time, my personal time, I'm spending on Facebook? They should be thanking me for that. And hello. So there is definitely a sense of entitlement on the internet that, sometimes when I make posts and essays and stuff on the internet and blogs, and I get these comments like, how dare you write about this? What am I missing here? Am I forcing you to read my blog post? Is your time so valuable that the currency is you're giving me your attention? I should thank you for that. I know you guys are all tweeting, that guy's such an asshole. He's so arrogant. This kind of audience is a tough audience. About a couple months ago, I was the first male non-presidential keynote speaker at Blogger. Okay, so it was a historical moment for Blogger. Yeah, and I talked about the supportive role of my wife and how much she made possible what I do, and it was really a tribute to my wife. And then there began this thread about how, guys just putting women in their traditional role of supporting the man. It's like, what drug are you on? That's not at all what I'm saying. And another funny story from that same conference is there was obviously a lot of bloggers, women bloggers, and somebody came up to the mic and asked a question. She said, my blog name is Martinis and Minivans. Okay? So you laughed, right? So when she came up and said that, I said, that is a great name for a blog. I love the fact that, mommy bloggers have great names for their blogs. So that became a whole thread that guys said that women have cute names for their blogs. Not great, cute. And so here I was, sexist guy again, and I don't know how I got on this story, but
It'll be interesting to see how the tweets or the Twitter sphere
my
interprets what you just
popularity is
said.
declining. I can feel my clout score getting lower right now. Scoble's surpassing me. Jeez, I'll never catch Paris Hilton.
I'll kind of veer the conversation to get you out of the hot seat, but we're talking about mobile and social, but eventually, the smartphone screen might disappear altogether as technology gets embedded into
Contact
glasses,
lenses.
shirts, shoes, appliances,
Yes.
cars. We'll no longer need to take our smartphone out in order to communicate with the world around us. We'll be continuously connected in a seamless way across a variety of platforms and in a variety of environments.
God help us, yes.
Yeah. I mean, one of the most famous examples from this past year, obviously, is Google Glass.
Yes.
I'm a glass explorer. Are you?
Well, no.
Have you tried them out?
Not really.
Okay.
Ever since that picture of Scoble in the shower, I couldn't. I just can't do it. For me, it's a little too geeky even for me. And to me, the killer app for Google Glass is facial recognition. Because I'm 59 years old, and I swear to God, I cannot remember people's names. And so, 9 months from now, if I bump into you at SFO, and if I had Google Glass on, I would love for it to say, this is Ann.
Yep.
She works at J. Walter Thompson. She's in charge of trend hunting for J. Walter Thompson. She interviewed you at the 3% conference. Right? And then I'll say, Ann, how the hell are you? Boy, you are the best moderator I ever had. That 3% conference at the Intercontinental Hotel on the second floor was it was fifth floor actually, such a great conference. Did you see all those women running into the men's room and using the toilets because there were... And then you think, my God, guy, you're like Bill Clinton. You have such a great memory. And that, for me, that is the only reason I would use Google Glass.
Yeah, no, it's perfect for conferences like this.
It
I'll
is.
tell you. So I went and got my Google Glass in July, and I went into the headquarters, Chelsea Pier in New York, or Chelsea Market, and I was there for 2 hours. And of course, I ask a lot of questions, as you can tell. But anything that takes 2 hours to explain seems a little too complicated.
It took 2 hours to learn how to use Glass?
Yes, I kept pressing the wrong button or tapping wrong or swiping wrong and taking pictures, sending them to my Google Circles that I didn't want to of the random tutor guy. So, I mean, I can see the possibilities, but I think there are a couple of things that need to happen, and I've been voicing this as an explorer to them. One is it needs to be out of the box simple. Two, it needs to have more functionality. Right now, its applications are limited, but I talked to a developer a couple weeks ago, and he said we're adding more apps. They just added a sports app for anyone who's a sports fanatic in the audience, so you can pull up scores. I could be pulling up scores and seeing what's going on in the series right now. But they need to add more functionality, and they need to make them more attractive. For women especially, and
Dolce
men.
Gabbana, look at.
Right now, it's still very Star Trekian, so I think that in order for women and men who are fashion forward to wear them on a regular basis, they need to look like regular eyeglasses.
Jimmy Choo's or
Well, there's a rumor they're doing something more. with
Jimmy Choo's is gonna make-
Warburg, right? Warburg
Really?
Park?
Maybe-
That's just a rumor. Don't spread that on Twitter.
Okay.
But it's a really interesting experience, and it shows you where technology can take you. And I'm really proud to be a part of one of the early adopters.
Well, also,
of it.
$1,500
Ooh,
is
that's
way
the
too
price
much,
point,
right?
yeah.
I can't imagine
Yeah, well, and wearing them down the street in New York City, I feel very vulnerable.
that someone's going to grab them.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be blinging it out on the streets of New York, would you? And that's bling.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So where do you think smart technology will go? Intelligent objects or the Internet of Things?
Also, that's a no-brainer, inevitable. The horse is out of the barn. I mean, it's going to start with a watch, and like right now, do you really need a watch and a phone and a Fitbit or a Nike Fuel? I mean, not really, right? So at least the first combination, first permutation is I would love to have really great Fitbit, and there's a new one that just got announced that now has a little screen, it has time, it shows you steps, it shows you altitude, I mean, how many steps you went up. So that is a major improvement, and it always syncs with your phone. That's a major improvement. But ultimately, do I need one on each wrist? Do I need a Fitbit and a watch? I don't think so. So between glass and that, I think that's coming for sure.
Yeah.
Inevitable, short term, and I look forward to that day. I love measuring that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and we're seeing our homes get smarter. Smart
Yes.
appliances are coming on the market, and our cars are getting smarter.
Our 2 dogs have a collar that we can geotag, geo-limit, so when they're outside of that, of course, the way it works is, so you put this collar on your dog, right? And the dog goes outside your yard, and you get a text message. The text message goes to me, my daughter, and my wife. And it's usually my daughter taking the dog for a walk. So then every time that happens, like we're panicking. Oh my God, our little pug is escaping. And so we got to call up somebody and make sure to go get her. So I don't know how I got into that either, but that's one of the consequences of all this data.
So what do you think, we talked about the challenges and the opportunities that marketers have with the mobile phone. As it advances into intelligent objects, what are some of the opportunities and challenges there?
Well, the direction, of course, is with all these devices eventually being fast, free, and ubiquitous. To use Robert Scoble's word, the context will be so much better, right? It'll know where you are, what you're doing, what temperature it is, all these kind of things, which can creep some people out, right? On the other hand, people like me say, thank God, you're sending me really relevant stuff. Like I subscribe, I always go to YouTube on the Android, on my phone to see what are the hot videos. And I swear, half the hot videos are like 12-year-old girl gymnastics. Like, I don't know how YouTube decided that I'm interested in that. Never did I express any interest in that. So, like, why can't I get stuff that I really want? Just send me hockey clips. That's all I really care about. I don't care about gymnastics, fails. So, can we just start with that? I mean, that would make me happy.
Yeah. I mean, it will be so contextual and so location-based and so relevant to the end user because it will all be framed in terms of their lifestyle. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk. You touched a little bit on social media earlier, but let's talk about the evolution of social media. I'd love to get your perspective. We have a perspective of what's going on right now, and it's kind of the evolution of. So 1.0 was when Facebook hit the market. Of course, there were predecessors, but let's cancel those out for now. But Facebook hit the market, and we were enamored by the novelty of it all. And many of us friended everybody, and we showed and told all, no matter how personal. And there was this rise of radical transparency. And now there was 2.0, and there was a spate of radical transparency remorse, especially as the younger online exhibitionists entered higher education and the workforce, and they realized that employers and admissions officers were vetting them through social media. And now we're entering 3.0. And we still want to live these social media vibrant lives, but we're finding creative ways to work the system or to carve out private spaces in this online world. So, some examples, some easy examples are pseudonyms. So pseudonyms known only to your friends and family so you can avoid the prying eyes of bosses. Or some high schoolers are holding dark rooms at parties where no mobile phones are allowed, so they can partake in uninhibited behavior without fear of the incriminating evidence.
It's an unintended consequence, yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And there are several other examples of this, and that you're seeing more exclusive networks pop up over the past few years, including Path, Best of All Worlds, iFamily Board. Google Plus is a great example because you can circle different people and share with different people, and in the manner that you do, it mimics your offline behavior. You're not necessarily, maybe, but you're not necessarily going to tell your mom the same story that you're going to tell your best friend.
No.
So I would love to hear where you think social media is heading in this realm. Is it going to get more exclusive, or are we going to just be fragmented across all of these different platforms?
I would actually vote for the fragmented theory, that different services with different feature sets, different geographies would work better. I happen to, in particular, love Google+. It's not because I helped Motorola. This happened way before Motorola. I love Google+. One of the main reasons why I love Google+ is contrary to what you said, because there really isn't pseudonyms, right? I mean, you really have to be who you are on Google+. And I noticed that in places where you can be other people, the comments get to be so destructive and so malevolent and so stupid. So I love the aesthetics of Google+. I love the fact that it, theoretically helps you in search results. I'm just so in love with Google+. And I'm one of the few, I don't know if I'm one of the few people, but on the flip side, with Facebook, what irritates me about Facebook in particular is the concept of edge rank, right? So it seems to me that if 1,000 people volunteer and opt in to see what you do, then all 1,000 people have said, show me what Guy is doing. Mm-hmm. But Facebook, apparently, has decided that only 200 of those 1,000 should see what I do. And I can't wrap my mind around that. And so, a lot of people say, well, Facebook has 1 billion people and Google Plus has, pick a number, 250 million or whatever, right? So Facebook is 4 times larger than Google Plus. But it seems to me if Facebook is 4 times larger than Google Plus, but only 1/4 of the people can see your posts, it's the same amount of people. So my focus is on Google Plus. I personally do most of my Google Plus, and then I let other automated processes and other people do my other social media. I just happen to love Google Plus the most.
And where do you think it will evolve? These products, how do you think they'll evolve?
I think eventually Google Plus will win because Google Plus has this tremendous advantage called Google. And we're not talking about 2 guys or 2 gals in a garage with $2 million of seed capital. We're talking about, the 8,000-pound gorilla. And so I think eventually it's going to be a Google Plus world. And
but Facebook is making a lot of acquisitions to build out its world.
yeah, but I mean, if you gave me a hypothetical choice of, okay, Guy, you could be a search engine and add social, or you could be social and add search engine, I would pick be search engine, add social. I think that is a much easier path. It's going to be a long time before I go to Facebook and I type in Intercontinental San Francisco to find this hotel's website. I can't imagine doing that. Although I suppose it would work, right? I go to Facebook, I say, where's the Intercontinental San Francisco? And, Lonely Boy 15 would say, Guy, it's, on Howard. It's going to be a long time before I depend on it that way. So
let's talk about the visual aspect of the social economy. Nick Bilton wrote this wonderful piece in the Times a couple months back, and saying that visuals or images were going to become or are becoming the new universal language.
Yes.
That's how we communicate. And this is a Google-dominated conversation because the anecdote I'm using is Sergey Brin. Someone asked him what he was up to, and he simply took a picture with his Google glasses and sent it on of his lunch. And that's all he had to do. He didn't have to say eating lunch, eating a hamburger. It was just the visual of it. People are using Instagram, they're using Vine, they're using emojis like nobody's business, and these virtual stickers. Where do you think that will head, and how can brands leverage that development?
I think one of the pieces of advice that I give to people about social media is that I think every single post should have a picture or a video embedded with it. Literally every one. And I've just noticed that whenever I post with a picture versus not a picture, and even if it's a picture that's naturally included because the link brought in the picture, which is a 200 pixel picture, every post that I do has a 500 pixel wide picture. I think it increases interaction and reading of it and all that by a factor of 5 or 10. And so this all supports what you just said. I think every post has to have a picture if you want to do it right. And not just the tiny one that randomly Google Plus decided to bring in. You have to pick your picture. And that is one of the most time-consuming parts of social media for me, is to pick the picture, worrying about copyright, going to Wikimedia, finding a picture that I know I can post without getting in trouble. I think pictures are the key.
And now we have the tools to take them ourselves, because our
Yes.
cameras have gotten so much more sophisticated
Yes.
on our mobile phones, and then upload them almost simultaneously or instantaneously, I should say. And I think that's what's driving a lot of this photo explosion, because people, whether they're photographers or not, they love to take pictures of everything from the special to the mundane.
I know, I'm as guilty of that. I mean, I can't tell you how many pictures I've taken of food. I mean, it embarrasses it embarrasses me how many. Like, where was I yesterday? Oh my God, I can't even remember. I was not in San Francisco. How did you know? I thought what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Yeah, I was in Las Vegas, so I was at the Mirage Hotel for the Digital Car Dealer Conference. And they served just this awesome fried peanut butter sandwich.
Wow.
It was
Wow.
amazing.
Just like Elvis.
And so I sent it to 6 million of my closest friends. So, this doesn't work? No? I think it got dropped. Okay. Okay. So, yeah, I take a lot of pictures of food, and it kind of embarrasses me. So here's my rationale for why I take pictures of food and stupid stuff and post it. It's because I want to show the human, real guy side of me. Not Guy the brand, not Guy the ex-Apple employee, not Guy the Motorola person. I want to show you that I like fried peanut butter sandwiches. And when I see funny stuff, not that I'm obsessed with this, but when I was using the bathroom, there was a woman coming out of the men's bathroom, right? I wanted to stop her and take a picture of her and say, this is like 3% conference. Women are asserting their rights. This is an example, one small step for mankind. They didn't listen to the rules set up by the male management of the Intercontinental Hotel, and even though it says men's room, they went in and used it because there's insufficient bathroom space for women. I was going to make this whole story up, but this woman rushed out so fast I couldn't take a picture of her.
And you wouldn't even have to make that story up necessarily if you caught her underneath a sign coming out. Like, that visual could say it all.
Yeah.
Which is so special. But do you think that there'll be any sort of fatigue around this? Because we are seeing so many, like this image explosion. Will we have this hyper documentation fatigue?
But you know what? I think this is a thing that every generation worries about, this issue. And I suppose that, when it was just the Pope and monks who had scribes, they were worried, God, what happens if too many monks work transcribing the Bible? There may be too many Bibles out there. People will get overloaded with Bibles. And then fast forward to 1700 or whatever. Now Gutenberg, like, spitting out Bibles all day long, right? It's like, oh my God, what if people read about this and they'll read the Bible, they won't come to church. This is the end of the Catholic Church. People won't come on Sunday. They'll just read their Bible in their home. Oh my God, what are we going to do? And then you fast forward to desktop publishing, PageMaker, LaserWriter, Macintosh. You say, oh, there's going to be explosion of books and newsletters, and people will be inundated. They won't know what to read. I mean, it's the end of society. And then you fast forward again. Now there's websites. You don't even have to kill a tree. You can just publish it. And then there's blogs. You don't even have to be a webmaster. You just go to Blogger and open up a blog. And now there's Google Plus and Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest, and now you can just post a picture. Oh my God, there's going to be an overload. And I think every generation says that, oh my God, it's going to be too much.
Yep.
And then every generation sees that, wow, guess what? The human mind can handle it. And we go on to the next generation, and it becomes even more. And so I don't worry about it, basically, is what I'm telling you.
It just becomes ingrained in society,
Yeah.
into consumer behavior.
I think so.
And second nature to them.
I think so. And for some at some level, it's self-levels, right? I mean, you don't have to be on Instagram and Pinterest all the time. People like me, I am, but you don't have to be. It's not a requisite.
Well, and some people are choosing not to be. I mean, some people are having social media policies, for instance, at their milestone events, like weddings, and saying to their guests, please refrain from posting photos on Facebook, tweeting about it, having
People say that at their wedding?
At their weddings, because they want to keep it an intimate affair, and they feel that if their friends are sharing it with their friends and friends of friends, then it becomes bastardized to a degree, because it takes that intimacy out of the event.
I just can't imagine doing that. Have you been to an event like this? Have you ever been to an event like a wedding where they said no? Yeah?
I see some hands.
Wow. I must be going to the wrong kind of weddings. For me, my perspective is a wedding is such a joyous thing that you should just like show the whole world that you fell in love and you found your, 50% probability life mate. It's a high percentage. I have never, God, if I ever go to a wedding like that, wow.
You'll have to confiscate your phone.
Oh my God. This would be a dark wedding?
A dark wedding.
Wow.
Just like dark rooms at teenage parties.
Oh,
Shifting gears a little bit from social media to collaborative consumption or peer power. I'm curious, we're at the Intercontinental Hotel, but how many of you are in from out of town and using Airbnb to stay at? Anyone?
A
Okay.
handful.
Few hands in the audience here. So,
God, Airbnb scares me. I would never let strangers into my house, number one. As a
I
renter.
have so many friends in New York
They do it?
who do it. And it's New York real estate is so expensive, so it's another form of income
Wow.
for them. But, we've seen this explosion of peer-to-peer products and services, and increasingly you're seeing services like Airbnb and Lyft and Side Tour upend major industries from hospitality to
Yeah.
travel to tourism. It's interesting, though, because you're seeing the traditional or established companies or systems push back. Right now, the Attorney General in New York is trying to subpoena the records of everyone who has ever acted as an Airbnb host.
Are you kidding me?
Yes, because they said it's illegal
He
to
or she
sublet.
has nothing better to do than that.
It's illegal
Like
to sublet.
They figured out how to stop.
Under 30 days.
They figured out how to stop burglary and rape and murder. And now they go, wow, we got to work on those people who are staying at things that are not hotels. That's their priority.
But you can imagine the hospitality industry lobbying the government to say you need to put a stop to this because it's putting a dent in our sales and our
Right.
and they're working around the system.
But,
So
I mean, that's the same thing with Uber, right? So all these taxi cab companies are complaining that Uber is unfair advantage because they don't have the right insurance and licensing and all that. To which I say, guess what? It's a cruel world, right? And so it seems that's the nature. I mean, that kind of goes back to the roots of America. That this is an opportunistic, capitalistic, aggressive, innovative country, and so I mean, I can't stand the hypocrisy that if you're a taxi cab association, you say, well, the reason why we're against Uber is because they're not properly licensed and insured. And, what happens if someone gets into an Uber car that is dirty or they get into an accident and they don't have insurance and all that? And you're telling me that every cab in San Francisco is properly licensed and insured and, it's a real wholesome person? I don't think so, right? And so at least if you're honest and you're saying, well, we have a monopoly, we want to preserve our monopoly because we can't think innovative, that's why you should not allow Uber. Okay. At least there's a grain of honesty there. But to couch it in those kind of terms, I can't stand hypocrisy.
and if you look at history, if you look at peer-to-peer music file sharing,
Right.
which Napster, the music industry was so hell-bent on fighting it
Yes.
because they feared it so much. And of course, they put Napster out of business, but meanwhile, Apple was coming up with a disruptive music
Yes.
platform that had the music industry like, whoa, why didn't we think of that? Well, because you were fighting this
Well-
disruptive force that had so much momentum, you couldn't stop it.
Well, it irritates the crap out of me that there is such resistance to change, right? So, same thing in the publishing business, right? So the publishing business today, they still want a system where, 10 houses in New York make the decision about what the world reads. And that is inconceivable to me with self-publishing. So with self-publishing, with music, basically all these artistic things, there still seems to be this thing that, some, I don't want to be sexist and ageist, but it's basically old, tall, white men want to control the world. And that is just not a scalable model anymore. So I don't, they should just give it up.
That's tweetable.
Yeah, right. I cannot stand the fact that people want to stand in the way of progress and democratization of information, that kind of. It's just morally wrong.
And if you focus your energies on what is right with the P2P model, even if you're a B2C or B2B company, you could incorporate some of those principles into your own
Yes, you would
company.
think. Like if I were a taxi cab company and I was thinking about how do I compete with Uber, all right? The first thing that I would think of is, well, listen, I use Uber and I use limos and I use cabs, right? And Uber, God bless Uber, it really works in a metropolitan area. But I live in Palo Alto area, right? And if you go to Uber in Palo Alto and you want to catch an 8 a.m. flight, so you need to be at the airport at 7 a.m., so you need to leave your house at 6:15 a.m. And it's not 6:15 a.m. you boot up Uber, you say, oh, where is there a black car around here? Oh, I see. 30 minutes from now, Uber will deliver. That dog don't hunt. You
Right.
cannot depend on Uber in that scenario. So if I were a taxi cab company, I said, listen, yeah, Uber is great. If you're in downtown San Francisco and you want to get to the airport, there's lots of black town cars in San Francisco. It'll work. But if you're in Marin and you want to get to SFO, you really better plan an extra hour just to make sure there's an Uber black car for you. But they don't think like that. All they can think about is, well, how can we use the existing status quo to justify a monopoly that we cannot otherwise justify? And I just can't stand that.
So we talked about all of these trends, from mobile to intelligent objects to the Internet of Things to social to collaborative consumption. And I know we talked about some of the counter developments, and you're like, I don't think those are happening. But I would love to pick your brain a little bit about the counter developments.
Okay.
One that we spotlighted back in 2008 and then in 2011 again is this notion of detecking. So as we become more dependent on technology, so too does our desire to dial it down, whether that means it could mean logging off, temporarily in order to re-engage in the offline now, face to face.
You're talking to the worst person.
I know,
Yes.
but how many of you have detect? No one? Okay, one hand.
No, there were
Okay.
about 5.
I can't see with the lights here.
Same
There's
number-
about 5.
The same number who went to dark weddings.
That's when they detect.
Yeah, that was at one time, yeah.
So you don't think this will happen?
Well,
I'm not saying detecting altogether. I'm saying, you know what? On the weekends, I'm going to put my phone away and just be more present.
I think that is largely a very intellectual and theoretical question that doesn't matter. That now somebody's going to tweet, oh yeah, guy just slammed the female host. Typical male reaction
can
to a
take
hard
it.
question. Yeah. Well, my point is that, people are free to do what they want. I'm not saying it's right or wrong to detect. I'm just saying it's your choice. And so, does it really matter? Do we have to discuss this as a societal trend? Does it have to be in, Wall Street Journal front page? People are detecting? I don't think so. Make your decision. It's an individual decision. It's an individual decision based on the context. It could be you're different Monday through Friday versus Saturday and Sunday, right? You could detect then or not. But I happen to be I'm like 5 standard deviation. I'm the worst. The only person who's worse than me is Scoble. But I have to confess, I sleep with a Nexus 7 next to me. And a few times a night, I check email.
Yeah, I'm asking the wrong person.
And, you know, and I check Google Plus a few times a night. I have a website called Altop where we aggregate news by topics, and I love photography and I love cars, so I check that, you know, sometimes once a night. I love to consume information, but then, you know, I read that if you use tablets a lot, the color of the screen or the rays coming out of the screen reduces your melatonin, so it reduces the quality of your sleep. Have you heard this theory? God, I hope that's not true, because you know, I'll be sleeping like an hour a night pretty soon.
Well, it sounds
so
like
I'm the worst case.
it sounds like you're checking your device throughout the evening, so that in itself ruins the quality of your sleep.
Yeah. Actually, that's true, yes. But do I seem maladjusted and unhealthy to you?
I don't know you well enough. I'll ask your wife.
Yeah, you could ask my wife, actually. Let me know what she says.
So what do you, shifting gears a little bit, but what do you think about this whole re-embrace of analog? So vinyl sales you're seeing rise by double digits. They're rising by double digits.
Several digits from 0 to 2?
Well, it's working off of a small base, but and you're seeing a lot of people repurposing products that have been rendered obsolete into something new. So what do you think of that? Is that just about the hacker mentality or the maker movement?
Again, hallelujah. I mean, you know, to each his own.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I happen to love Maker Faire, for example, right? And that's more or less all analog. I mean, there's some digital stuff there, but you know, it's hard to get a digital representation of a flame-throwing thing, right? So I love Maker Faire. I'm not a craftsman, hands-on kind of guy. What can I say? But I do love Maker Faire. So again, I mean, to each his own.
Yep.
I mean, that get the message from me. I truly do believe to each his own. And if you want to sleep with a Nexus 7 like I do, hallelujah. And if you don't, if you never want to turn a Nexus on or your phone on after 6 p.m. and you want to read, you know, stories to your kids at night and play board games and, you know, have long intellectual discussions at the dining room table with your family, hallelujah. Invite me to your house. I'd like to see how that works.
Probably the kids are screaming for their devices. So, I mean, it wouldn't be a 3% conversation if we didn't talk about the elephant in the room, that being women. And
That's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're not elephants. But
I didn't say that. She said that. All right? Just get that tweet accurate. Man. I don't want to have to be defending myself.
But you know, earlier today, and since you're in tech, this is a good question to ask you. Earlier today, a creative director at VML said, well, you guys think you have a problem in the ad industry with only 3% of your creative directors being women. Check out the tech field. So I would love to get your perspective on how that can change in technology. How can we see more females represented in the tech field, and what we can do in our industry to change that as well?
Well, first, I don't know if I would set off with the goal of changing that per se, okay? So I think the goal is that people should pursue their dreams. And if your dream is to run Apple and you're a woman, God bless you. It should be possible. On the other hand, if your dream is to raise a family, that is also legitimate. So I don't think we should make this value judgment that, you know, unless you're Sheryl Sandberg, you're not doing your thing right. And I have a daughter, and I will be damned if I will let any sort of convention that says she cannot be a CEO or she cannot be a CTO. Now, she may choose to not be, but it would be over my dead body that she was limited by society. And it seems to me, like I have a hard time wrapping my mind around this fact that business to me is so hard and it's so competitive, and you have to do your absolute best to get the absolute A-plus players. So why in the world would you wipe out half the qualified candidates just because they're women? I just don't understand that. And so from a purely pragmatic standpoint, you should just hire the best person. And now, I suppose you could go back and say, you know, it happens in school where women or girls are less interested in science and all that. I don't believe that kind of stuff. It's a question of, you know, is it self-fulfilling prophecy? Is it because people communicate that way to women and girls? My wife and I, we are intent on raising a daughter who is just going to take no crap from anybody. And now, again, she may choose to just, you know, take a other kind of path, a non-technical, non-business, non-whatever. God bless her. But it's not going to be because she couldn't take that path. And I think that's the important thing. Now, if you weave this into entrepreneurship, the good news is that today, most things that an entrepreneur needs, a tech entrepreneur needs, is free or really cheap. So let's go down the list. So you need tools. Well, most tools are open source today. You don't have to buy $1 million Oracle database anymore, right? So tools are free or cheap, open source. Marketing using social media is free or cheap. You don't need as much commercial real estate because your team's going to be virtual anyway. You don't need to buy roomfuls of servers because you're going to use Amazon, you're going to use GoDaddy, you're going to use Rackspace, it's going to be in the cloud. You're not going to be buying roomfuls of servers and IT departments. So if you go down the list, everything you need is free or cheap. And when everything is free or cheap, that means anybody here can start a company. And when anybody here can start a company, that is a better world. Because then, you know, you have to compete not on the basis of your gender, but on the basis of your competence. And that is just a better world. It is better that it's a meritocracy like that.